you tell how many people have been shot?
I think 2 children.
What did the female say to you?
And she says that her stepfather is killing everybody in her house.
Show us your hands now. Stand the up.
The stage and air going to go ahead and fly whenever any is going to die.
Get your hand.
He was their world. He was their guardian. And he executed them in cold blood. We know that from his admission. He planned the events of this day.
He knew what he was doing. He planned it. It was premeditated. He shouldn't have a bond. He should never see daylight again.
Judge, he has committed one of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be our misfortune to see.
The same way he did his sons is the way he needs to go out.
3 little boys executed. Prosecutors say it was their father, Chad Doerman. They say he confessed to it. They say he planned it, he plotted it, all of that. And it goes against every instinct, right, that all of us have as parents and grandparents. I want to take some time. We got some experts we're going to bring in just a second, but I wanted to show you, go through some of the cases that we've covered through the years here. Let's start with 3 moms, okay? Andrea Yates killed 5 children by drowning them in the bathtub on June 20th, 2001. Suffered from postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and schizophrenia. Trying to understand why this would happen. Deanna Laney stoned 2 of her 3 children to death, left the 3rd permanently injured, confessed to the crimes, and she was the one who called 911 and said that God instructed her to kill her children. Another one that every Court TV viewer will remember, Susan Smith drowned 2 sons in a lake in 1994, lied to police telling them her children were kidnapped during a carjacking. Let's talk about some dads. Timothy Jones Jr. killed 5 children, ages 1 through 8 in 2014. Drove around with the children's bodies for 9 days in that car. John Battaglia shot his 9- and 6-year-old daughters to death while their mother listened on the phone back in 2001. Prosecutors say he murdered the children in an act of revenge against his ex-wife. And then there's Chad Doerman, who allegedly confessed to planning and carrying out the deaths of his boys, ages 3, 4, and 7, ripped the 4-year-old from his mother's arms, shot him to death. The 4-year-old son was shot twice in the head. 7-year-old was gunned down while running away. Why? Let's bring in our guests. Joining me in Los Angeles, California, forensic psychiatrist, body language expert, trial expert witness, Dr. Carol Lieberman. In Cleveland, Ohio, someone who knows a lot about this, professor of psychiatry at Case Western Reserve University, Dr. Philip Resnick is with us. Also in Rock Hill, South Carolina, the attorney who prosecuted Susan Smith, Tommy Pope. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate your valuable time. Dr. Resnick, let me start with you. You're an expert in the Andrea Yates case, Deanna Laney case. You did a consult in the Susan Smith case as well. Can we answer that question, why parents go against every instinct that's in our blood?
Sure. I've been studying this phenomenon for more than 50 years, and I've seen about 80 parents who've killed their children. And I have divided the reasons into 5 categories. The first is altruistic, what I call murder out of love. That is, the mother or father loves the child and is protecting them from what they may see as a fate worse than death. And Andrea Yates is an example of that. The next category is acutely psychotic. That is where there's no comprehensible motive. And an example of this would be Deanna Laney, who heard God's instruction to kill her children. That's called a deific decree. The third category is when the children are simply unwanted. They stand in the way. And that was the prosecution theory in the Susan Smith case. And then the fourth category is the only one which is not intentional, and that is child maltreatment, where someone is engaging in child abuse, a battered child syndrome, and the child may be thrown against the wall and die. And then the final category is spouse revenge. And one of the examples you just showed was that where the desire to cause pain to the spouse is greater than the love of the children.
Dr. Carol Lieberman, and thanks so much, Dr. Resnick, for laying it out that way for us tonight. Dr. Lieberman, you know, everyone who's watching tonight, all these parents are like, well, how could that even happen? Like, what goes on in our lives that could take us to the place where we would think it's better, that the revenge factor is like higher than the instinct that we have to protect? It's unreal.
Yes, it really does. It's very hard for juries to wrap their heads around this too. And, you know, of course there are, you know, cases where there really psychiatric issues do intervene and are, you know, take over. With Chad Doerman, you know, the video of him being arrested really speaks against his being psychotic, you know, being able to have a not guilty by reason of insanity defense, because, you know, clearly he does not seem like he doesn't know what right from wrong, or, you know, isn't able to make that decision, is impulsive. I mean, he was sitting there. In fact, it speaks to how defiant he was. You know, they're yelling at him to get up and all that, and he's just sitting there. And so he was so determined in his beliefs that he did the right thing, or, you know, for him did the right thing. And of course, one of the really sad things about that case is that one of the warning signs of really these are family annihilators. For men, it's most often family annihilators. And one of the warning signs is a man who is perpetrates domestic violence. So it's really sad that neither his wife nor the neighbors or anybody, you know, reached out for help.
Tommy Pope, as a prosecutor, you were the prosecutor in the Susan Smith case, and many others, obviously. But how do you go about figuring out the why of it? Because that's a big part of the analysis, right? For a prosecutor, is trying to figure out why as you go forward with your case and figure out what direction you're going to go.
Sure, I think breaking down what Dr. Resnick gave us, even, you know, the revenge and the unwanted really comes down to parental selfishness. You know, they put their needs ahead of the children's needs. And so I think the first thing as a prosecutor you look at, is there a true mental health issue? As Dr. Lieberman was saying, this particular case, I imagine he did that somehow to punish her. So it would fall in again to one of the doctor's categories to prove a point more so than any true mental health. With that being said, obviously anybody that commits a crime like this has got some mental health issues, or they never go that far along in perpetrating the crime.
All right, Dr. Resnick, this is something I'm very curious about, which is, in all your years of studying this, 50 years, is there a difference that you've seen between mothers and fathers in why they take the lives of their children?
The answer is that there is substantial overlap. In other words, some fathers may be severely depressed like mothers, and may altruistically take children into death with them. But if you actually look at the breakdown in large samples, fathers are more likely to kill in the battered child, you know, to physically shake the child to death than mothers. And mothers are more likely to have altruistic psychotic motives than fathers.
And is there any way to ascertain like how common or how bad the problem is here? Because we're in a streak right now here at Court TV where every day we're reading headlines about another case involving a mother. Next hour we're talking about you know, a newborn situation. Is there any way you can ascertain that or figure that out, Dr. Resnick, about how common or uncommon this is?
About 450 to 500 cases occur in the United States each year, and that is roughly 3% of homicides. So that means that you know, 1 in 33 murders is a parent taking their own child's life.
Dr. Lieberman, what are your thoughts about warning signs and for people to have their eyes open that, hey, we've got a parent who is capable of this?
Yes, of course, that's the answer, you know, to try to prevent these things. Mothers don't reach out for help oftentimes because they don't want to be seen as a bad mother. You know, they're afraid to tell their symptoms. They're afraid to tell some of their thoughts that they have about hurting their children or, you know, whichever kind of category they fit into. They don't want to admit it. They don't want people to think that they're bad mothers. They don't want them to take their children away, although, you know, of course, then they do what they do to the children. And with fathers, also, you know, they aren't going to tell people. But, you know, as I was mentioning earlier, of course, domestic violence is one side. For mothers, really, there needs to be more attention when mothers give birth to their history, their psychiatric history. And before you send the mother home with the baby, you know, you need to ask a lot of these questions because a lot of the mothers who have postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, that is really, there's an underlying psychiatric disorder. And then the giving birth, pregnancy and giving birth brings it out. So if you determine these things before you send the mother home, you know, that would go far in trying to prevent some of these cases.
All right, our experts are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about what happens to these parents, these mothers and fathers, once they get into our system. How do prosecutors handle them? How do judges handle them? And how do juries handle them? That's next.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight.
That demanded our attention.
They were killed by their own children.
That challenged the legal system and ourselves.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before reporting her child missing?
These are the trials that became legendary. And now you can relive them all in one place. Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
I want to start out by expressing the deepest sympathy I have for this family, for this unspeakable tragedy. We do have, I can't go into a whole lot of facts, all right, because this is a death penalty case, and my goal is to have this man executed for slaughtering these 3 little boys. It is, let me try to figure out a way to put this. It is an incomprehensible act of horror that he perpetrated on this family. So again, that is my most important focus right now, is to ensure that they are protected and they are safe. And my hope and wish and prayer is that someday they will be able to find peace.
Prosecutors will be looking at the death penalty for Chad Doerman for the murder of his 3 children. Now, let's take a look at the way some of these cases have ended and what the results have been. What happens once these mothers and fathers end up in our system of justice? Let's begin with the 3 mothers we've been talking about tonight. Andrea Yates, she had an initial trial, was found guilty. That was overturned, tossed out. Major mistakes in that one. 2006, the jury came back not guilty by reason of insanity. Deanna Laney, again, smashing the heads of 2 of her 3 children, killing them. The third, permanently injured, not guilty by reason of insanity. Susan Smith, prosecuted by Tommy Pope, guilty, life with the possibility of parole. Let's take a look at the men we've been talking about tonight. Timothy Jones Jr. was found guilty, death row. John Battaglia, guilty, death row, executed in 2018. And in this case, we know that the state is going to be seeking the death penalty. So how does our system treat and deal with moms versus dads? Still with us, Dr. Carol Lieberman, Dr. Philip Resnick, and Tommy Pope. Tommy, I'll start with you on this one. Do you see a difference within our system of justice, whether it's the judges, the prosecutors, the juries, in the way moms who kill versus dads who kill are perceived?
Yeah, so back when there was pressure on Smith, it was interesting, the crime took place in October. She was Susan the villain in January, and to the defense credit, she was Susan the victim by the time we got around to trying it in July. And one of the things I noticed and the approach I took in seeking the death penalty, she had accused an African-American of carjacking her. I thought if he had really done that, they would run me out of town if I didn't seek the death penalty. The next step, if the father had done it, they would expect the death penalty. So I felt strongly, even knowing the track record, even back then, of females in the death penalty, that she deserved, whatever the punishment would be, she deserved the same punishment. What I believe is these jurors, in their own lives, as they bring that to bear, we don't want to think mothers can do this, because every day you go off to work, you leave your young children with your spouse, for example. And so I think they search harder for the mental health reasons that Dr. Resnick, Dr. Lieberman had pointed out, than for the wife, for the female, for the mother, because it makes us feel better, because that's why it won't happen to me. Because that happens to somebody else, those mental health issues. It doesn't happen to us. But when it's the father, I think they're much more severe in the punishment.
Dr. Resnick, you've been involved in so many of these cases. I'm interested in your thoughts about the way our system deals with moms versus dads who are accused of murdering their children.
It is true, and this is true of a jury perception, that it is harder to imagine a mother doing this in a normal state of mind. We as society believe that mothers have unconditional love for their children. And let me just give you an example of a study. 400 fathers and mothers were asked the question, if your son committed a brutal murder, would you still love that child? And for mothers, 98% said yes. For fathers, about 55% said yes. And so this is just one example of the unconditional love that ordinary mothers have for their children. We also saw it in, for example, in World War II, we had Gold Star mothers, because society felt for a mother to lose a child caused a different amount of anguish than a father losing a child. So for this reason, it is harder, it's much easier to think of the father as evil than it is the mother, even though some mothers are evil and some fathers are severely depressed or psychotic and should be able to have the same advantages that a psychotic mother does. But that's the reality of how juries perceive the situation.
Yeah, Dr. Lieberman, do you think the system is fair in this respect?
Well, of course, mothers do have one advantage in the sense that the hormones during pregnancy do play a big role, and I think that that's easy for, or easier even, for juries to understand than thinking about all these other things. How could a mother or father kill their kids? But there is something happening that's making it somehow easier, in a sense, for parents to kill their kids. Because look at the case, you're going to be discussing it in the next hour, Alex Treviso, this young teenager who allegedly killed her baby after it was born. and pretended that she wasn't pregnant, but meanwhile she had a name. She had given the baby a name. Her friends, told on her, and the courts let her go. I mean, it's one thing to let her go back to class to graduate, but they let her go. She went to prom, and there she was smiling with her boyfriend, the father of the baby, and at prom. I mean, what message does that give to everybody, especially to her kids, that life isn't really all that important? So I think there's something that needs to be done in terms of how we regard these things, not just what happens in the justice system, but how these things are portrayed in the media. Certainly you do a very good job of that, Vinnie, but not everybody does. And, to have that coldness to think that this is okay.